Working as an FBI special agent was my dream job. My whistleblowing was apolitical and in the spirit of upholding my oath. Nonetheless, the FBI cynically elected to close ranks and attack the messenger.
The FBI will crush you. This government will crush you and your family if you try to expose the truth about things that they are doing that are wrong. We are all examples of that.
Joining us now are Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle. Thanks for joining us, fellas.
FBI whistleblowers Steve Friend and Garrett O'Boyle both join us now. Gentlemen, so glad to have you on the program. Thank you for your testimony.
We need more folks like you, and I'm sure more people going to be from your background are going to be giving you guys more intel as you're sharing that with the rest of us. We can kind of see that this is becoming normal for them to be held accountable, because I think especially an institution that we pay their salaries, they need to be held accountable.
I think a lot of people do share our beliefs and convictions. I think they just aren't at the point that Steve and I and others have gotten to. They're too afraid.
Thank you so much for being a guest here on PBD Podcast.
Thanks for having us.
How big is that bloody flag that Steve's got? It's the stone wall of his house. Lots of love, guys. Thanks very much for joining us.
That's Steve Friend, Garrett O'Boyle. Thank you for being with us this morning. More importantly, thank you for speaking out. We appreciate it.
You're in the information age, but facts are in short supply. Reject the noise, ask bold questions, and pursue the truth with FBI whistleblowers and founding suspendables Garrett O'Boyle and Steve Friend. This is the American Radicals Podcast.
It is the American Radicals Podcast. On a Tuesday, it's a brand new week. Hope you all had a great weekend. Ready to get back at it with us today on the American Radicals Podcast. Rumble.com/amradpod. Reminder, if you haven't, smash the thumbs up. Please do. Subscribe if your heart compels you to do that. Give us a follow and listen to the audio format of the show on iTunes and Spotify and iHeart. When we drop those on Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, 10:30 Eastern time is when we come to you guys. And today, in a brand new week, we're going to be talking about choosing your champion. I think the conclusion that Garrett and I will probably come to is that it's going to be a case-by-case basis. Otherwise, if you just always love somebody, that's kind of called idolatry, but I'm not a biblical expert like Garrett is. We'll have to get his thoughts in a moment. But today we're going to be talking about some good and some bad and giving some demerits to those who deserve it and some accolades to others. Girls who are standing up or actually taking a knee against men in their sports. You have a state attorney general defying a communist judge, other judges who are lying about their records, and then maybe a deep dive into John Fetterman, my fellow Sinai Award winner, who might be in a worse state than he was actually represented mentally. And as a result of that, now he's taking some heat, and we're going to do sort of a comparison between the political spectrum of the way that one side looks at their champions versus the other. So a whole bunch to get to today. Let's not belabor this any more than we have to. Let's bring on my counterpart, my co-host, my compadre, Garrett O'Boyle. Sir, hope you had a good weekend. Ready to go after it.
Oh, I'm ready. Are you ready, Steve?
I'm ready. And actually, I got you. I wanted to get you dialed up for choosing your champion or choosing your fighter. So I found this one, which I think is inspired by the Super Smash Brothers.
I like it. I saw that one, Steve. I'm going with Jasmine Crockett, Dollar Store Cardi B all day.
She will take the earrings out and the heels off, and you know she's going to grab that weave.
She'll throw on her Ebonics, her fake Ebonics, as we know, because she didn't always talk like that. But it's so pathetic, and I don't know why, Steve, because I've never read the books. I haven't seen the movies in quite some time, but I can't help but think of Hunger Games with a stunt like that. And they take themselves so seriously with their grimaces on their face. Give me a break. You people aren't fighters. You're pathetic. You're cowards. You're weak.
The Hunger Games, I did read, and it descended into, are you on team socialist or team fascist? And I just said, I'm gonna eject from this entire book series. Okay, all right. Let's give some accolades to. There's two stories that are together on the same issue. I know it's probably more of a passion issue for you because you are the father of 4 young daughters. Catholic Votes reports on this Maine representative, Laurel Libby. She was barred from the state house floor after opposing boys in girls' sports.
How dare she?
So here's the problem, though, from my perspective. She was formally censured a couple months ago after she posted a photo and the name of a male student who now claims to be female on her public Facebook page. So, like First Amendment. So, quote, we've learned that just 1 year ago, John was competing in boys pole vault. That's when he had his 5th place finish. Tonight, Katie won 1st place in the girls' main state Class B championship. So she's kind of just calling out this dude who claims to feel pretty. And as a result of that, she was censured. And then she cannot vote on the floor. So her entire constituency, which is 9,000 voters, effectively have no voice. So she sued the Speaker of the House who censored her. And a federal judge ruled that legislative immunity shielded the Speaker and that the temporary nature of the punishment, the infringement on her first free speech and ability to represent her constituents, it's undermined claims of constitutional basis because it's only temporary that we're going to infringe on your rights.
Dude, I mean, so presumptively, here you have this woman, Laura Libby, who's doing what her electorate want her to do, those 9,000 people. Sure, she didn't get all of their votes, but she got enough to win. And I imagine that the commonsensical position of girls should play girl sports and boys should play boy sports was part of her campaign, which because we're living in the upside down and that's where we're at. And now she not only is her right to think and decide and engage in free speech and propose things that she thinks are good for Maine and good for America. Not only is her right to do that getting suppressed, now all those people who voted for her are as well. And you mentioned the legislative immunity or whatever it was called. It has me thinking of qualified immunity, which for those who don't know, and in law enforcement, qualified immunity is if the law enforcement officer can claim that they were acting in good faith, that they were acting in accordance with the law or what they thought the law was even. So sometimes you could even be wrong and still get that protection. We got to do away with a lot of this immunity crap because it allows people to be tyrants. And that's not what we're supposed to have in America. So whether it's the speaker in Maine or a law enforcement officer or you name it, the person in government, we got to stop shielding them because it only emboldens this tyrannical behavior.
And I mean, just from a First Amendment standpoint, I mean, when you become a representative, you don't forfeit your right to free speech and have an
Right.
ability to post something on your social media. I mean, I'll make the slippery slope argument. I mean, let me just proffer something hypothetical that could never possibly happen. Like, let's say you were posting something from Genesis, right? Like, and that was offensive to the Speaker of the House because you're a white Christian nationalist, ergo domestic extremist. So we should expel everyone from the House who holds these beliefs. So, and wouldn't you know, we have a unanimous votes on everything then because only the communists are there.
Exactly right. And perhaps, Steve, it could be, I don't know, maybe something out of Genesis 1, right around verses 26 and 27,
The mind meld.
where it says men are men and women are women, and that's how God made us. Oh, how about that? How
Well,
dare you, you extremist?
4 girls in Oregon, which is not a conservative state, actually came to that conclusion. So good on them, and we're going to give them a helmet sticker. Group of high school girls in Oregon took a knee in protest of a male athlete who is consistently winning competitions as a female. The male named Leah, spelled L-I-A-A because he's fancy, won the competition with a jump of 4 feet 10 inches that was enough to beat out the 18 girls he competed with. And the lead of these 4 girls, her name is Sophia Carpenter. She's ranked number 5 in the entire state. And I guess I'm not too well versed on track and field events, but I guess you have to aggregate points throughout the season that will then lead you be able to be eligible for like the state finals and that sort of thing.
Okay.
So she's sitting out this event, even if she was going to get second place in it or third place in it, she forfeited those points. It actually does hurt her ability to succeed. And then you never know about maybe future prospects. It could hurt her chances to get a college scholarship because unless a recruiter digs into the details, they're not going to know that she did that. And maybe if they do dig into the details, they're going to say, we're from the University of Washington and we really like Antifa, so you're not coming here. So
Yeah.
she put herself out there, and she deserves all the credit in the world for that courage and conviction.
Yeah, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because think of the scenario you just proffered for us, where maybe a recruiter's most likely not going to dig into the details. Let's say they do. Well, then they're just going to determine she's a good athlete, but she's kind of a problem because she's standing up for what she believes in, and not even just what she believes in, but for the truth. Because there's men and women. That's it. There's boys and girls. That's it. You only get to do one of the two.
Sounds like someone speaking from experience who maybe didn't get hired for a specific position because they were politically a problem for it, Garrett. But we'll just leave that there.
How dare we? How dare we?
All right, pivot over to some judges. And I think I got like 3 different judges, and choosing your champion, stolen valor. This is kind of a problem. An elected judge in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. The recommendation is that she be removed for misrepresenting her military service. That wasn't all that she did, though. So the State Office of Special Counsel recommended this 19th Judicial District Judge. Her name is Tiffany Foxworth Roberts. So we'll call her Roberts because the patriarchy always wins. And Roberts, quote, lied in her sworn statement to the special counsel, claiming she attained the rank of captain while serving in the Army. Not only was she never a captain, but she also failed to achieve the rank of captain 2 times and required her separation from the U.S. Army Reserves. The brief said she misled police also about the location of a burglary of her vehicle. She told the police that it was in her driveway, but authorities discovered that it was actually several miles away. I mean, that seems kind of weird until you dig into it more, which is what they did over 2 years of investigating her. Okay, 2 years. My question is, was she on the bench during this entire time? It didn't say in the news story. She misdirected the special counsel investigators by telling them that she didn't file an auto insurance claim for the items that she said were stolen from her car. But she left out the fact that she filed a claim with her homeowner's insurance policy. Then she filed a second claim and said that she had a $19,000 diamond ring stolen from out of her car when she didn't, in fact, have that. So she's committed fraud on top of all of that.
So she's just a habitual liar, and so she's lying about and she's a judge. So at least Louisiana saying, you know what, you probably can't be a judge because you lie too much. But how was she able to persist in her career, in life? People had to have known, because when you're this narcissistic, where you're lying to the police about your car getting broken into and where it was and what was in it, those traits must have shown through earlier in her life or in her career. But just keep rising up the ranks, promote her to be a judge. And for those not listening, or maybe I missed it, but she's a black female. And is that part of the reason the DEI metric? Even in a place like Louisiana, as red as Louisiana is, hey, just keep sending her up the ranks. And from the military standpoint, it kind of brings a chuckle to me, because captain is not necessarily a difficult rank to attain. In my experience, it was nearly automatic for lieutenants to go from second lieutenant to first lieutenant to captain, maybe even up to major. Then lieutenant colonel and above is when it starts getting a little more competitive. But she couldn't even pass the mustard to become a captain twice, and then she's going to lie about that too. I mean, Steve, this is why we talk about so often here. Things, we might have a little bit of a reprieve, but it's not all peaches and cream at this point.
And she was in the Army Reserves, which you might be able to shed some light on this. That's kind of confined to your state, right? If you're within the right, like, you're not moved all over the country. You're not like, oh, I'm in the U.S. Army Reserve, so I'm being stationed now in Louisiana when I was living in Texas.
Yeah, when you're in the reserves, like, you might be able to live in Louisiana and your reserve command is in Texas, and so you might have to go there once a month or whatever. But typically, National Guard and Reserve are similar. National Guard is where it's more confined to your state. Reserves, you can live wherever, but both are part-time soldiers is what it boils down to. And the broader military, big DOD can kind of tap into either, kind of on a whim. And yeah, but
I'm
she's
I'm just
she's
think
living in Louisiana is what
I'm
it
just
boils down.
thinking that there's because of that fact, like she knew people in that state that were serving alongside her that knew that that was a lie.
Right.
The fact that she was able to keep that under wraps, and maybe that's why it originally went to the office of the special counsel because finally somebody stepped up. It didn't specify, but it's a little bit unique because like a reserve or a guard, you're living in close proximity to all the people who you're theoretically serving with, whereas you might be put in a podunk area that you have no connections to, and then you separate from the military, then go somewhere completely else. You could sell a stolen valor
Oh
story a
yeah,
lot more
for
easily
sure.
that way.
For sure.
All right, another judge, and this one, I don't know where you're going to fall on it because it is a first free speech issue, but it's also a child safety issue. So here's the question. So, reporting from Uncover DC, an Ohio judge strikes down the social media parental consent law. On Wednesday, April 16th, an Ohio federal judge struck down the state of Ohio's Social Media Parental Notification Act. This law requires parental consent for children under the age of 16 to access various social media platforms. While the ruling has been praised as a victory for free speech by tech industry advocates, it's also brought up fears about the growing dangers of online child exploitation. So you could see that there's definitely a balancing act here where you would need to have a judge use their judgment, and they might come on down on one side or the other. There is a free speech element here because who are you to infringe on somebody's ability to express themselves or gain information just because they're 15 years old or 14 years old? But you need parental consent to get a tattoo if you're 14, and that's free expression. So where do you fall on that one?
I think in this one, I lean towards the judge ruling properly here because children. I mean, think of even when you were 18, Steve. We were just talking about the military. I think of my early Army days, even probably close to when I was getting out. I was 25, and but those early days, especially, you're still kind of like a kid at 18, 19, 20, 21. And so 14, 15, I think it is appropriate to take some steps to protect children because there's so many pitfalls and so many traps kids can fall into these days, especially online. So I'm okay with it here. And some people might say, "Well, wait a second, you guys always champion free speech." Yeah, we do, and we do uh, prefer dangerous freedom over tyrannical slavery here. But there still is a balancing act. There still is appropriate measures that the government can take to balance that First Amendment right with safety. And I think for minors, I'm okay with it in this case.
I think it's a little bit symbolic as well. I mean, if there was some sort of parental consent, there's not going to be an individual person that shows up to your house, a representative from the social media company to verify that your parents are actually clicking I approve. I think it's just a little bit extra layer of friction that the 14-year-old is going to have to click and forge the signature or approval of their parents of in order to get onto Instagram or TikTok,
Hmm.
something the next day. So to me, like these laws that have been being championed, I think a lot of it is sound and fury, signifying nothing from politicians who are trying to say, I'm interested in protecting the kids. And it's not really ever going to impede on anybody's ability to access that information.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't there some type of porn law? I,
Going to SCOTUS, man. It's going to SCOTUS from Texas.
Yeah, and isn't that similar where okay, it pops up a warning page. And think our era it was latchkey kids. You get home from school, your parents are at work. Today it's just here's a device. The device can we'll get you a cell phone and just go on the screen. Just stay at school for another couple hours. I'll pick you up after work. So, yeah, it's very symbolic I think like you said.
No, the device babysitter is a big problem. And actually, I mean the actual babysitter. I think I've said this before, but I had worked in a case, child exploitation case, where there was a service that was an online nanny service that you paid like 10, $12 an hour for an online nanny. You just plopped your kid down and the nanny would engage with them over an iPad and do
Wow.
fun activities.
Nanny
So
cam.
For $12 an hour. I don't think they were screening the people, and they clearly weren't, as they were then encouraging those kids to engage in certain activities that are probably not family safe to talk about.
Hmm.
So just for your awareness, that's a real thing out there, American radicals. Let's do another judge and then also a state attorney general from my state. We have a new attorney general because Ashley Moody was elevated to the United States Senate.
Mm.
So the Florida Attorney General is going to rebuff a judge who ordered the halt of a state immigration enforcement. Our Attorney General now is James Utzmeyer. He was the chief of staff for the governor, and he moved him on over to Attorney General. So Florida Attorney General Uthmeyer will rebut a judge's demand that his office order state law enforcement to halt enforcement of a state immigration law. She ordered pause under the suspicion of unconstitutionality. So this female judge has come and has said, your state law is unconstitutional. So I'm ordering the attorney general to stop all of his state officers, state certified peace officers, from enforcing this law. Now, what does the law say? The law allows for a misdemeanor charge against illegal aliens who enter Florida and hope to avoid federal immigration officials. So they came here seeking sanctuary,
Yeah.
and our state officials say, we're going to hold on to you and give you over
Okay.
to ICE.
How is that unconstitutional? We've talked about judges a fair amount since the turn of the new year, and most of the time it's been federal. But look at this, man. It's insidious. It's across the board. This is a state level judge. And in America, one of the things that has made us great is that we can have opposing ideas. We can have opposing beliefs. And it used to be where a judge, if they didn't agree with my perspective from a law enforcement standpoint, from a legal standpoint, from just a breaking down the statute for the statutory requirement perspective, that was okay, because if they made a cogent argument in their decision, it was like, all right, I can live with that because they're the judge. This is how they ruled, and I can see their point of view. I can see their perspective. Today, it definitely seems to me that the judges are just they've been captured by the Marxist ideology from whatever law school they attended, because it seems like most of the universities, and think of someone going to law school on top of it, you're there for 7, 8, 9 years. You they're just it seems that by and large we are just done as a nation, that we're trying to whack-a-mole the subversive Marxist for the next hopefully 3 years roughly, but we'll be lucky to get to the primaries and be able to keep it up. But they just keep popping up and making these rulings that are clearly against what the people of a specific state or the whole nation want. Like in this case in Florida, that law is completely reasonable. It's basically a backstop to the federal law on
It's a
immigration already.
stopgap measure, yes. If our state officers encounter you and they can hold you on a misdemeanor charge and give more time for ICE to come and get you, and that is a partnership going on right now. And this communist judge wants to stop it from happening so that we can have lots of illegals moving around within the land of milk and honey. And I'll go back to it because there is a kind of a cool flex here by the state attorney general. So if Uthmeyer were to be brought before the judge because she's threatening him with contempt, the court would likely need the assistance of the U.S. Marshal in the territory, whose name is Greg Leljadal of the Northern District of Florida. But there was a Thursday tweet that came out from Attorney General Uthmeyer. It showed the two men smiling in his office with the Attorney General commenting on their, quote, great meeting.
That's hilarious. Good luck, judge. And another piece
You and
on
what
these
army?
Yeah. Another piece on these judges is they think they can act with impunity because they think, well, I'm the judge. Nobody can tell me. That's not necessarily how the system is supposed to be. That's not how it was set up to work. It was supposed to be the balancing act, the separation of powers. And so, at what point do judges like this start getting arrested for their violations? I mean, to me, it seems like it's only going to escalate. We've talked about the cold civil war going on in this country for a long time. This is escalatory. So we saw that judge in Milwaukee recently arrested by the FBI. Are are we going to start seeing more of these people arrested? Because I don't really know what other option we have.
There's a personal conduct issue where you have the judge who was living with the Tren de Aragua gangbanger, I think in New Mexico, and then the one in Milwaukee who was physically escorting the illegal out of the courtroom. But this is a procedural move within the parameters of her role as a judge. She would argue, "Oh, there's a qualified immunity here. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or what I think is within my purview to do." I think if it's laid bare and really clear that you're definitely standing in the way of the executive branch performing its executive function and using some sort of malicious intent and adherence to the procedures that are completely fake and false. I think there's a strong case to be made there. It's just going to be a question of, does an attorney general who's buddies with the U.S. Marshal is going to have the stones to not only say no, judge, but then go after the judge. He might be the guy to do it, and I'll be here for it.
Yeah, I would love it. I was chatting with one of our followers who I've gotten to know a little bit more personally. We were texting over the weekend, and they asked me, or they said, "Hey, have you ever thought about going to law school?" And that's been something that people have mentioned quite a bit. And then they said, just thought exercise here. What would you like to do if you were brought back into government? And I was like, I really don't think the FBI is going to be an option at this point. Maybe that will change. I'm certainly not holding my breath there because it's May 6th. And as you well know, here we are doing a podcast and nothing has really changed along those fronts. So, but I was thinking about it a little bit, and I said, I always wanted to work public corruption. And that was one of those violations in the FBI where I was chomping at the bit, looking for an opening, hoping to land eventually somewhere on a PC squad. Because back then I was looking at it from a perspective of when I was a cop, and when I see these videos on YouTube of cops violating people's rights or whatever, I always thought I would love to investigate that, because those people those tyrants need to have the full weight of the federal government bearing down on their neck. That would be an appropriate use of government. And now when I think of this with these judges, sign me up. Where do I sign up? I mean, hey, here I am. I'm still technically an FBI employee, Steve. I would love to work that violation and start going after some of these creeps.
And for those who don't know, people are jumping out of windows to avoid working on a public corruption squad. Like, that makes you highly desirable to fill a body to that squad. It's really unique and weird because the FBI essentially exists to deal with originally bank robbery and public corruption and complex financial crimes,
Yeah.
and nobody wants to work it. In
Nobody
fact,
wants to do that.
attorneys don't want to prosecute the cases. The universal response you give people is, I'm really bad with numbers, so blah blah blah. Like, it's addition and subtraction. Like, you're just gonna have to muscle on through this thing.
You can use a calculator, all right? It's not your geometry test.
All right, let's two stories here, and then we have both sides of the coin here. We have the face of evil, and then perhaps an avenging angel, a member of the government who could be here to help. Haven't heard that too often here. So, but first, the negative, coming from the Washington State Standard. A new law requires the clergy in Washington to report child abuse. That's interesting phrasing.
Wait a second.
I would say break the confessional, but
Yeah, it was no doubt. I thought clergy were already mandatory reporters.
Let's dig into Senate Bill 5375. It adds clergy members to the state's list of individuals legally required to report suspected child abuse to law enforcement or Department of Children, Youth, and Families. While disclosures in confession or other religious rites where the clergy member is bound to confidentiality are not exempt, religious leaders will retain their privilege to not be compelled to testify in related court cases or criminal proceedings. And the senator who brought this forward, her name is Noelle Frame. She said, quote, "You never put somebody's conscience above the protection of a child," unquote. It's all about the children.
The children.
So they can be, they're mandated to report it, but they're not mandated to testify. But they are it's not, it doesn't really, that's, you can't really square that circle, right?
No.
It seems like they're just targeting the members of the clergy, trying to put them in jail, trying to put them for a decision to be defrocked or imprisoned, one or the other, which is why we mentioned the Deputy Attorney General of the Civil Rights Division, Harmeet Dillon, recently elevated, not waiting 6 to 8 months. Justice Department announces First Amendment investigation into Washington State's new anti-Catholic law.
Oh, great. Look at
Well
that. Look at
done.
that, Steve. Government can move fast.
The news report about its passage that I threw up there, and I'll throw it up again, is from May 2nd. And the press release from the DOJ is from May 5th, 3 days later. The quote is Senate Bill 5375 demands that Catholic priests violate their deeply held faith in order to obey the law. A violation of the Constitution and a breach of the free exercise of religion cannot stand under our constitutional system of government, said Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon.
I mean, I love it. I love to see it because that's what she's supposed to be doing. We just saw I think it was even before Harmeet was placed over there at the civil rights section of DOJ, but they set up this like anti-weaponization against Christian task force, did they not? So she's doing what we want her to do. This is the collective will of the people, and it's happening rapidly. Now, yeah, just a press release and they're going to go after it. Now it's going to start to probably slow down a little bit, but at least it was already announced here. But also back to this clergy issue. Maybe my understanding is wrong here, Steve, but as I go back through the annals of all the classes and whatever else law enforcement academies and everything that we've gone through, it's clear that you have privilege with a clergy member and that they don't have to testify. This is clearly established, long-standing case law behind First Amendment protections. My understanding was always, though, and whether it was your privilege with your spouse or with your clergy or whatever, that although they don't have to, they can't be compelled to testify. I thought they could. So I'm not a Catholic, but if I was and I went to confession and I told, this is just hypothetical for you evildoers at Secti listening, but I confessed to the clergy member that I murdered somebody. I thought they still kind of had the option of whether to kind of turn you in, because that's pretty egregious. And also, I would say that whatever aspect of the Christian faith you adhere to, that wouldn't violate their conscience, because when you're told of some evil deed like that, that part of your faith is the requirement that you try to rectify evil.
I think that they would be defrocked if they turned you in for that. They would encourage you to turn yourself in.
Ah, I see.
And there have been cases, I believe, of priests who basically gave up the priesthood in order to turn somebody in who wouldn't do it,
Yeah.
because they were, some child molester or something to that effect, and the person confessed it and wasn't going to go forward, was going to continue to
Yeah.
victimize other people. And I mean,
they think they could just go to confession to cleanse themselves. That's not how it works either. If you maintain in your sin, well, good for them then. I mean, that's the equivalent of a whistleblower right there.
It's always the most sympathetic case they're making, right? Like it's the safety of a child over your sincerely held beliefs. Like, who are you to put your sincerely held religious beliefs over the safety of a child? And you're forcing the people who are advocating on behalf of free speech and free religion to defend the harboring, I guess, of a child molester, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's very, very purposefully done, because then it'll be easier once you've been able to make our side look bad for that, to say like, well, look, they're defending child molesters. We can round them all up, right?
Yeah. Now that we're kind of diving into this a little bit more, it really, well, it brings me back to the Holocaust Memorial Museum trip, to be honest. And I've touched on Dietrich Bonhoeffer a little bit, especially recently in some of my Substack posts. And it really draws me back to the early and mid 1930s Germany. This is the exact type of thing that the Nazis did to the clergy in Germany. And it's that slippery slope where they slowly build it up and they slowly say, well, you just maintain the issues with your faith. But then it gets to a point where the government is so tyrannical that they then just mandate what the church does.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we saw, at least in Germany, there was something like 18,000 clergy, and there was only like 3,000 who actively resisted. And then even less than that who really, really actively resisted, like Bonhoeffer did. But that's the slope we're on. And people, oh no, it's not going to happen here. We've got the First Amendment. Do we though? That's why we call it an alleged land of the free.
You had 80% of them just give it up for the tax exempt status for their church, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about John Fetterman, my fellow Sinai Award winner. It was John Fetterman, Steve Friend, and Ayaan Hirsi Ali. One of these things is not like the other. All right.
At least they're bipartisan over there. When
they are. They are indeed. It was supposed to be for people who pushed for freedom. I don't know what John Fetterman did, but he is actually the beneficiary of a system that's been set up. And let me just set up this sort of a parallel example. Right. You're having a Thanksgiving dinner and of 10 people, and 9 of them are communists and 1 is a conservative. That dinner will be very peaceful. Right, because that conservative is going to keep his mouth shut.
Yes,
right.
Just pass the peas.
If there are 9 conservatives and 1 communist, it's going to be very disruptive because a communist is not going to be able to keep his mouth shut and is going to destroy your Thanksgiving dinner. And it's a contrast of one side versus the other. And use that to compare it to the strange new respect that one side accepts or really, really thirsts and hungers for, and the other side that doesn't at all. So the communists, you have to be 100% on board with everything that they want. And if you deviate even a little bit, they will destroy you. Whereas a conservative side, they will do backflips in order for you to say one thing that they kind of agree with, which is what happened to John Fetterman, because he was like, yeah, I'll vote for maybe 1 or 2 cabinet picks. Oh, I'm on Israel's side in the Hamas Israel conflict going on, and that made a whole bunch of Republicans very happy, and they want to basically run him for president right now, right? They can't wait to do it. But because he took those 2 steps outside of the communist side, where he votes with 99% of the time,
destroy him,
they wind up pushing forward this story, which was a bombshell from the New Yorker. It's called All by Himself. Okay. So John Fetterman, there's been quote calls for him to resign. Now it's an expose on not his political preferences, but just his mental status, because he had this stroke. This is from the New York Magazine's Intelligencer. The reporter's name is Ben Terrace. Fetterman suffered a stroke during the final months of 2022 run for Senate, pulled off a much-needed victory for Democrats, even after going to the debate and saying good night, everyone, when they opened up. Right. He had a worse debate performance than Joe Biden. Right?
Yeah, and he still beat Dr. Oz.
Okay. So he was still suffering in dire auditory processing issues and speech problems. New York Magazine reported that the senator was involved in a serious car wreck in May or June of 2024, in which his wife, Giselle, was injured. I believe she's an illegal alien, too. After he ignored staffers' concerns and got behind the wheel and then fell asleep. Now, another incident happened on aboard an aircraft, which there's actually a video of, and I'll throw this up.
Was he flying private like AOC? And,
no, he's one of the people. He's wearing his Carhartt hoodie, sweatshirt, and shorts.
Shorts, yes.
He gets into an argument with the airline attendant.
Is your seatbelt on?
Yes, it is.
Okay, it needs to be visible for the crew at all times. That's not an us thing. That's a federal regulation. So it's okay. It's okay. Okay, it's okay, but it just has to be visible to the crew at all times. It's a federal regulation, so if your seatbelt's on, it just has to be visible. And right now, it's not visible.
I mean, I don't like to defend the communists, but like maybe John Fetterman's kind of like, these regulations are ridiculous.
This is dumb. I think that every time I get on a plane, what good is a freaking seatbelt going to do for me? You know?
Apparently he had it on underneath the hoodie. He dropped the hoodie on top of it.
Common. I mean, come on.
But he got into this. Well, at least it's being portrayed because the communists hate him now because he, I don't know, voted for, was it Hegseth or somebody they voted for his cabinet secretary, and then also is not an anti-Semite, which is probably why he got the Sinai Award winning, like I did. They really want to go after him. So back to this piece from
this is a big nothing. I mean, we just watched it and you could hear it. He's saying, hey, I got my seatbelt on. All right, it's not a big deal.
Oh, it goes on for another minute where he resists doing it.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So Fetterman continues to struggle with the burdens of his office, and in January, days after Trump's inauguration, melted down with a despondency over whether or not to support Pete Hegseth for Secretary of Defense. Ahead of the vote, Fetterman raised the possibility of abandoning Washington, D.C. and refusing to vote at all. He also, quote, spent part of the day locked in his office, fighting with Giselle and crying while FaceTiming with staff. Now, I don't
Hey
know if this
man,
is true.
he's got feelings. We've all got feelings. It's okay.
Look, I mean, choose your champion here, Republicans. Okay, just be careful because the guy votes for you one time out of 100.
Yes.
He is making a very strategic move for the most part.
And he's waving an Israel flag outside the window. I mean, this is that slope, Steve. We continue to march left, and John Fetterman's going to be a piece of that, I think.
Well, as long as we're talking about electing officials, I can think of no one better to send to Washington, D.C. than an FBI whistleblower. But not this FBI whistleblower, Jonathan Boomer.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Jonathan Boomer is announced that he is running for Congress in Arizona. He was the FBI whistleblower who came out and said the FBI went too soft on Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump. Okay. All right. Jonathan Boomer, he also did that really like eerily produced with music and I don't know, atmospherics where he was in this fake office.
He was trying to not get arrested. It didn't work out well for him.
He accused the FBI of suppressing his investigations into Trump ally Rudy Giuliani. He filed paperwork to run as a Democrat in Arizona's 6th congressional district. Boomer was arrested in March at JFK Airport in New York as he prepared to board an international flight. Federal prosecutors allege he printed more than 100 sensitive FBI files in October 2023 and began writing a book shortly after, sending drafts with confidential material to associates. He was released the next day on a $100,000 bond, which is interesting considering how many January 6ers were held for standing outside the Capitol. And he ordered to undergo a substance abuse evaluation. That's pretty standard stuff, though. I don't know if you can draw any sort of allegations about his abuse of alcohol or drugs. I think that's kind of just normal. So Boomer, he calls himself, quote, the most significant whistleblower in FBI history.
Of course he does. That's that typical hubris we see in the FBI.
His campaign filings describe him as an Arizona native, though they list an address in Prescott outside of the actual district. So he's trying to carpetbag too.
Isn't he going to be like in federal penitentiary by the time they vote?
Do you think he and Santos can be Sellies?
Yeah.
It'd be a bipartisan experience.
They'd keep each other warm at night too, most likely.
I'm on board for some of these people in government who are forcing the bad people in government, like the Jonathan Boomers, to leave. I think they could be our champions, at least on this issue. A report here from Reuters. 15,000 USDA employees have taken the Trump financial incentive to leave. The fork.
Good. Bye.
The sum represents 15% of the entire workforce.
I like it.
100,000 people work for USDA.
Yeah, can we add another, I don't know, 35,000 or so to this number?
Oh,
maybe more.
And along those lines, talk about Jay Bhattacharya. So he's over at NIH now, which is that the Fauci?
Yeah. Yep.
So they're closing the experimentation labs accused of brutally killing thousands of beagles, thanks to Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. I mean, again, I'm not a dog guy. I get it. Like, I don't want beagles to get murdered. I'm not a sociopath. But shutting down the global economy, leading to the destruction of tens of thousands of small businesses and learning loss and people's inability to say goodbye to loved ones and the deaths of despair compared to beagles, not there yet, but this is probably still a good thing. National Institute of Health Director Jay Bhattacharya recently announced the agency closed its last in-house beagle laboratory. They had multiple ones, apparently. Maybe beagles have some sort of similarity genetically. I don't know. Maybe it's like a pig or a rat or something. A report from the White Coat Waste Project detailed the lab's history of allegedly pumping pneumonia-causing bacteria into more than 2,000 beagles' lungs, bleeding them out, and forcing them into septic shock for deadly experiments. Environmental Protection Agency Chief Lee Zeldin, another one, also announced his agency would reinstate a 2019 policy from the first Trump administration to phase out animal testing. So these guys are against like animal cruelty, I think. I'm not necessarily against animal testing because I like people better than animals. But I think there's also, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, like a Levitical premise here where you don't cause undue pain and suffering to the animal while you're doing it. Like there's a reason that you don't cut off the one leg of the steer to eat it to make sure that the leg tomorrow is fresh because the animal's still alive. Like that's not allowed.
Yeah. Oh, here's what I want to know, Steve. Why were we doing this in the first place? I struggle with this, and I'm with you that I care about humans even more. But what are we torturing? How many beagles at this point over 40 years? For what? Who came up with the idea? Let's pump them full of pneumonia causing fumes.
It's an
What?
interesting PowerPoint to bring to the conference room.
Hey, I got an idea. I really, it makes me think of World War II again, but this time the Pacific Theater. Have you ever heard of Unit 731? Have you ever heard of that?
No, educate me.
They were this Japanese unit, and whenever they'd get POWs or whatever, they were doing horrific experiments on people. And here we are, and again, I know it's not people, I know it's just dogs, but to your point about sawing the leg off the cow so you got some fresh, hock meat this today, and you'll have some more tomorrow while that cow is suffering. Why in America we're supposed to be this bastion of hope and freedom? Why would we even be doing this to dogs? I remember the first time I saw that picture of the beagles like laying on their side with the mask over their face, and it a couple years ago now it came out regarding Fauci because he had been there for about 40 years. So I just I can't square this circle on my own because I just ask why would we ever even be doing this?
I do agree with the following move though. I would not ask why we are cutting funding for NPR and PBS. So again, like issue by issue, I'm in favor of this one. This is a Trump terminating NPR PBS federal funding with a sweeping executive order as it's described by the New York Post. So NPR PBS received partial funding through this organization called the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, because we just have to launder money from one agency to another agency so we can have more jobs, which the president argued is unnecessary in the current media environment. Agree. PBS and its member stations receive 15% of their revenues from this Corporation for Public Broadcasting. NPR stations get 10%. So it's not going to be like it bankrupts them, you would think, unless their margins are smaller than that. But if you're able to secure 85% or 90% of your funding elsewhere, I see no reason why the American taxpayer should have to kick in, because the government isn't in the business of broadcasting. Like, where does it say that? Is in the invisible ink on the back of the Declaration of Independence that we're supposed to have media that's funded by the taxpayer? The Corporation for Public Broadcasting is set to receive $535 million in funds in this year and next year.
Wow. Every penny of that should be cut. It makes the $450,000 that the FBI just signed a contract for look very slim.
$448,000 or $444,000, something like that. Yeah, like $450,000 for a podcast on retirement benefits for federal employees. Look, I'm just going to put it out there. I threw it to you last night, Garrett. They should have just manipulated the algorithm on Rumble to promote the American Radicals podcast and the Kyle Seraphin show. And we could have gotten that money in ad revenue. And then that wouldn't have even cost the taxpayers anything.
Yes. And we'd go away. We'd exist in our small corner of Rumble. And we'd
Secti, you're not really conspiring to commit a public crime here. Right. One more for the day, and we'll go back to our ex-girlfriend also losing some funding, or at least proposed in Bloomberg law. FBI, DEA targeted for broad funding cuts in the new Trump budget proposal. So this is called the skinny budget, where they're going to spend untold sums of trillions of dollars. The White House suggested that Congress provide $33 billion to the DOJ. That's down from 36. So we're cutting $3 billion from DOJ. The FBI would see $545 million decrease. So I guess we'll send that all to the CPA, BB.
Yeah, to the
All your money went to PBS. So they want to bring it down to like $10.5 billion.
I mean, can they just carve out 1% for whistleblowers? I mean, is that too much to ask, Steve?
Oh man, that would be 1% of $10 billion. I mean, do you not know how percentages work?
Hey, we
There
got
would-
to divide it amongst a handful of us.
There would be way more whistleblowers then. The White House proposed $460 million cut to ATF, which they have a $1.5 billion. So it's almost like a third of their entire budget getting cut, which that's awesome. And a $200 million cut to the DEA. And DEA only has $2.5 billion. I thought DEA was much larger than that. The proposal similarly targets the DOJ's Civil Rights Division, which we railed about. I mean, Harmeet Dillon doing what she can, but it is, like being the skinniest kid at fat camp or having the best gas station sushi in Southern Alabama. They tasked with enforcing the nation's anti-discrimination laws and its Environmental and Natural Resources Division for cuts. And instead, they're going to prioritize funding for Criminal Division because they want to fight crime and illegal immigration rather than BS. The schools are somehow suspending too many black kids, even though the black kid happened to commit the violent offense. It had nothing to do with his race.
I'm all for any type of budget cut, but is this even a drop in the bucket? Not really.
Not even a drop in the ocean of how much funding that there is actually on the table here. And that's really the most disappointing thing. Look, country elected a 90s Democrat, man.
Yeah.
Not going to get any funding cuts at all. It's just insane to think that $7 trillion is now like the cupboards are bare. We can't go underneath that at all. And this is not the subject of today's show, but I just keep scratching my head. They're talking about the tariffs and we're not going to tax anybody ever again. And instead, we're going to pay for it all with tariffs. It's like you would need to tariff every product at like 150% and assume that all those products are still going to come here and get purchased without any retaliation. And then any comparison to like late 1800s America saying like, well, we funded everything with just tariffs. Hey, I agree. We should go back to 1800 spending levels. That'd be fantastic.
Exactly. You can't have one without the other. In theory, it's great. That would be awesome. We're going to get rid of the income tax. Yeah, okay. That sounds awesome. And I would like that as much as the next guy, even though I don't have any income to be taxed right now. But
allegedly, we all know you're really pocketing that revenue sharing from Rumble.
Yeah.
And look, you are pocketing a Rumble rant, which I do want to throw up from Peaches62. Thanks for helping me keep track of in shape.
Keep my neck in shape.
Keep my neck in shape. Sorry.
Yes. A lot of stories to shake your head at. Keep those neck muscles moving.
All right. So we're going to wrap it up on the day. Garrett, give me your final thoughts. And I do have a fun palate cleanse when it comes to choosing your champion.
All right. Yes, sir. 1 John 2:15 through 17. Again, do not love the world or the things in the world. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh and the desires of the eyes and pride of life is not from the Father, but is from the world. And the world is passing away along with its desires, but whoever does the will of God abides forever.
Beloved, we must constantly examine our hearts for the presence of this love of the world. Now, be careful here, because there is a tendency to take this in very wrong directions. We've got to fight worldliness, and so what that means is you don't drink, smoke, cuss, or chew, or date the girls that do, right? That's not what this is. That's the enemy's sleight of hand. Because I can love alcohol and not drink it. Amen? I can love drugs and not take them. I can love. I can love these things. My passions and my affections can be pointed in these directions, and yet my legalism and my moralism says I'm better, not just than I was, but I'm better than you. Amen? Because I fight the urge. Because I don't participate. I still love it with every fiber of my being. John's not saying here, don't participate in the world. He says, don't love the world. We must develop discernment in order to determine the difference. But not only that, love becomes sinful when it arises from the wrong source. Not only when it's pointed in the wrong direction, pointed toward the wrong object, but when it arises from the wrong source. Verse 16. For all that is in the world, the desires of the flesh, the desires of the eyes, the pride of life, is not from the Father, but is from the world. So there's a problem first with the object, and now here there's a problem with the source. That this love for the world arises from the world. Just like our love for God and for the things of God arises from God. It is God who gives us the capacity to love God. But here we have a love that is arising from a different source.
I think that's good for today, but it's a good constant reminder that the enemy is lurking around every corner. We're trying to follow the Bible. We're trying to follow what Vodi is talking about here from 1 John. And there's still the trap of falling into sin because of your pride, because you think, oh, I'm going to be better. I'm going to do better than that person. That's not what it's about. We're going to stick with this one a few more times. I mean, it's just so rich, and there's just so much to unpack from it. But I'm a big fan of Vodi, as I've said before, and certainly of this passage. So I hope it's been beneficial for all of you.
And when it comes to choosing your champion, today's palate cleanse, the subject is the greatest baby race of all time.
Everybody loves the come from behind finish. The underdog.
It's as American as apple pie and baseball. All right, guys. That's going to do it for us today. Appreciate you as always. If you haven't already, make sure you give us a thumbs up here on Rumble and a follow, and definitely subscribe to the audio format on iTunes, Spotify, and iHeart. Back with you 10:30 Eastern time on Rumble. And until then, guys, have a great day.
You've been listening to the Voice of the Suspendables on the American Radicals podcast. Follow us on rumble.com/amradpod.